Hi, welcome to this edition of Weather to Watch. It's the 7th of April, 2025. Finally, some calmer weather to look forward to, but you won't believe the crazy severe weather stats that we've experienced year to date. Hello, everyone. It's a quieter day across all of the United States. Here's our Monday loop, and we're looking at a system that's leaving on the East Coast, a little swirl in the upper atmosphere around Michigan and the Great Lakes, and some high clouds, mostly just coming into the Pacific Northwest. And we're going to get off this map because there's a little data glitch which is about to make me sick. So let's move on. Okay, this is the 500 millibar flow, and what we do have is what we call a long wave trough right here. And then we have little short waves in here, which are just kind of embedded. So we got a pretty strong one right there, and just kind of a stretched out, maybe two actually right here, one there, one there. These are just disturbances in the middle part of the atmosphere that are used as kind of a test to see where active weather might occur. And this down in the south is what's causing a little bit of thunderstorm and shower activity still in the southeast. Technically a severe weather threat still there, but it doesn't look all that impressive to me. And then this is a characteristic S shape in the clouds of a pretty strong little vorticity area moving through. That's what these X's are here. But there's not much to work with that particular weather system. And again, in the northwest, we do have a flow coming in, but nothing big. In fact, I don't really have any huge, devastating rain totals to talk about anytime soon. Severe weather is quieted down, although I'll show you some stats so far going into April this year, which are pretty amazing. Let's take a look at the southeast. We have cold air coming in behind this system. That's what the stratocumulus clouds are all about. And then we have this weather system here, which is pumping up still a lot of moisture from the Gulf and from the Atlantic. You can see kind of the more bubbly clouds indicating some of the thunderstorms. If I change to where the watches are, the only thing left is this area here. I think this is a severe thunderstorm watch area. These are all flood warnings, longer-term flood warnings, not flash flood warnings, but just pretty bad. And, if you've been watching this video, you'll know that all these areas in through here have been hit by this several times already. So they've had a lot of water this spring, and this is a flash flood watch right here. Otherwise, the weather's pretty quiet. In fact, there isn't a single severe thunderstorm warning on that map, and that is certainly good news. What has replaced the severe weather is cold air. Temperatures at 7 a.m. on Tuesday morning. This is the NAM model. Pretty good representation of what's going on. So the freezing line is where it changes to blue. So that gets all the way down to southern Kentucky, maybe even northern Tennessee, over to southern Missouri, and then curves on back up into the Great Plains. So very, very chilly air. In fact, a hard freeze is usually defined as something in the mid-20s, and that line is roughly about right here. So that's actually pretty bad as well. And of course, if you're up here, you probably shouldn't be planting anything yet. If you're down here, you might have said, "Yeah, I'm gonna risk it." Well, I don't actually plant anything until at least April 15th, and as I've said before, I live right there. So this would be something that I'd have to cover the plants for tonight and hopefully get away with it. But you can take a look at the freeze warning that's in effect for all this area. So I'd be in trouble tonight. Probably covering it might not be enough. We're not just talking frost anymore. It's freeze. And there's a freeze watch in effect for northern Mississippi and Georgia. There's that flood watch I was talking about. And this part of the tornado watch has been canceled now. So everything left is this severe thunderstorm watch here. And again, there were no warnings in effect. And I'm not really expecting things to get too out of hand. A little bit of snow maybe in parts of New York and especially the northern 2/3 of Maine. But otherwise, winter weather in terms of snowfall has kind of disappeared here for a while. Not a lot of severe weather outlooks to look at, so let's focus instead on this. This is a pretty amazing map. This is a plot of every single polygon tornado warning that was plotted not since the first of the year, just since March 1st through April 7th through today. I don't expect to add it to this today. So look at the concentration of tornado warnings there in northeast Arkansas. And of course, some of the most notorious tornadoes of the last couple of outbreaks have hit either in northeast Arkansas or southeast Missouri. But there's also been a good cluster around the St. Louis area, southeastern Arkansas into northeastern parts of southwestern Arkansas, rather, into northeastern Kansas, and scattered reports in Mississippi where individual outbreaks actually did most of that damage. Pretty astounding, really. I don't have a count on how many warnings that is, but it's a lot for this time of year, and we'll show you some stats on that in a minute. Severe thunderstorm warnings cover the map. It's easier to talk about where there haven't been any. Northern Missouri, A little bit around the I think that might be kind of a mist. I think that actually is yellow around St. Louis, but it's just showing up because there are so many of them. But as you might expect, a hard concentration right where those tornadoes are. Longer term flooding, this is issued by river basin usually. You can see kind of a reflection of what I was just showing you with the advisories that are currently in effect. But those are all the flood warnings that have been issued since March 1st. And flash flood warnings, numerous from south central Missouri into the heart of Arkansas and covering a lot of eastern Arkansas and northern Mississippi into Tennessee and Kentucky as well. Let's come back to the tornado stats. So this is the National or the Storm Prediction Center, NOAA, division of NOAA, keeps a track of how many tornadoes have been reported. And I think this is through the 6th, so through yesterday, but through today for all practical purposes. So the number is right there, 455. So what this does is it goes through years that have had, similar amounts, and you can see we're well ahead of the game in terms of almost all of these years, except for this color right here. We were ahead. I'm trying to figure out which year that is. It looks like that's 2008 right there. So yeah, we're tracking ahead of almost all of the stats, and then this dashed line is the normal. I think that goes through 2005 to 2015. So yeah, not surprisingly, we're way ahead. We are taking a break, but for how long? How much more time can you buy here in April and May? Well, we got a little bit of a break, but this is the supercell composite that was actually spot on for the last tornado episode that we had here in late March and early April. So this is just looking at the possibility of a supercell, which doesn't mean a tornado, but it does mean a storm capable of producing all modes of severe weather. Tornado is one of them. So we have large hail and also gusty, just plain thunderstorm winds. So where you got to have a supercell, generally speaking, to have your most notable tornadoes and severe weather. So this gets up, the heart of Texas, up into southwestern Oklahoma, maybe as far north as the Kansas border. And again, this is a generalized forecast, so it's a 7-day period. So it looks like that's coming back to the southern plains. Interestingly, at the end of April, it's not as intense, but the storm parameter kind of shifts north a little bit. That looks more like a June map than an April map with the severe weather epicenter right there. But again, the intensity levels, the probability levels are not as great. But this does change from time to time. So on that last, let me just go back for a second. I think that last graph is probably fairly accurate. This is further out. This is 3 weeks, so it's probably less accurate on that front at least. Now let's take a look at the pattern. So this is the high temperature departure. So if it's shaded green or blue, it's a below normal pattern. If it is shaded in a hotter color, red, yellow, orange, that's warm temperatures. So much of the eastern half of the U.S., in fact, pretty much exactly the eastern half of the U.S. is experiencing high temperatures on Tuesday, much below normal. It would only be in the 30s and 40s in Michigan and in parts of Ohio and Indiana. Missouri will get into the 50s and 60s. It will get pretty warm out in the high plains, though. 81 in Goodland, Kansas. He has 74 degrees in the Denver area. A little cool because of some flow and some clouds in the northwest. We go ahead to Thursday. The cool air is shrinking a little bit, but still pretty strong around the Great Lakes and in through parts of New York State. Meanwhile, the central and western U.S. are beginning to heat up on Thursday with 80s coming back. In the valley areas of Southern California, 101 degrees forecast there. And then by the time we get to Saturday, again, kind of a reinforcing shot of cool air. We'll take a look at the 500 millibar flow here right after this, actually, and you can see what's causing that. And in fact, this forecast does not get into that severe weather period I just talked about quite yet. So this actually goes only through just before the 15th. So this weekend coming up is not quite there yet. So we got some time. So this is actually a dry weather pattern, I think, and a warm one for much of the central U.S. Finally, we'll look at that 500 millibar flow. This is the latest on the forecast on the GFS for the 500 millibar flow. And as you might expect, it's going to show you the features we showed you earlier in the video. That little trough right there, that one right there, and some flow coming in the northwest. So let's speed this up and take a look at what's happening. We generally have a drier, cooler flow of air across the central U.S. This does not allow Gulf moisture to come back into the plains. In fact, this is a severe weather killer, and that's really good news, especially right there where it needs to calm down the most with the rain and the severe weather, as you saw. So, yeah, this pattern is very favorable. We've got a ridge of high pressure. This is now Saturday during the day. Kind of a ridge of high pressure builds in right here. So this is the warmth I showed you on those temperature plots here a second ago. A few troughs of pressure coming into the northwest, but this is not a real critical storm pattern that I see unfolding. If we go a little bit down here further, we have kind of a bowling ball of a storm crossing the northern plains early next week. So that's about a week from today. We're starting to lose accuracy quite a bit here, but I do believe that's probably a valid claim there. And I don't know if we can get into this. The last map I'll show you here in a minute is getting down late into the week. It looks like we might develop some rain patterns right in through the central plains, that same area that was hit. But this is really getting out in the future. But I do think that there might be some more heavy rain potential in those same areas I got all the heavy rain here over the last 3 or 4 days. And here's a look at that hazardous weather forecast. This is for the potential for heavy rain. It's a slight risk, so it's not overwhelming. But, of course, where it is what's most important. This is April 17th through the 21st. Again, toward the end of that loop I just showed you. So watch out in areas from Oklahoma sweeping east-northeast through those same areas that got heavier rain. There might be another episode of this coming up the week of the 17th through the 21st. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.